People's freedom, Jean-Paul Sartre says, frightens them because it puts all the responsibility on them to make choices. For example, he explains vertigo in this way. You stand at the top of a cliff and swoon. But why? His answer is because you know that you could throw yourself off it. You are free to do this. And the fact that you could make that choice scares the bejesus out of you. People try hard, Sartre says, to run away from their freedom. In a famous passage in Being in Nothingness, he asks you to imagine that you are in a restaurant and have a waiter, Pierre. Now, Pierre is overly solicitous. He carries the tray just so. He tries really, really hard to be the perfect waiter. Why? Because he knows deep down that he is not a waiter, essentially, that he's just putting this on. He could, if he wanted, sit down at your table and demand that you get up and go get him a glass of absinthe. Pierre is not any particular thing. He is at his core a nothingness, but he wants to be a thing. In this time and place, he wants to be a waiter thing. It's far, far easier than is taking the responsibility for the fact that he's making the choice to behave as a waiter thing, something that he essentially is not. The ego, Sartre says, is a result of magical thinking, of trying to fill the nothingness that is consciousness once you strip away from it all the objects of its attention. And by magic, of course, he doesn't mean real magic. He means fake magic or tricks. The ego is a pretense to ourselves, a trick that we play on ourselves to fill that void. Sartre is absolutely correct about this. That the ego, as usually conceived of, is fake magic. It's an illusion. Sartre calls this attempt to fool ourselves into believing that there is an I there with a particular set of properties, bad faith. We are attempting to fool ourselves and others, Sartre says. So, how does this fake magical thinking that creates the ego work? Sartre gives this example. Pierre walks into a bar. You look up, you see him, you feel a momentary repugnance. You then elevate this momentary repugnance, this spontaneously arising feeling, to the status of an emotional state. I hate Pierre. And then perhaps you go further. You elevate the emotional state to a characteristic of your ego. I am a Pierre hater. And thereby you build these characteristics of an ego that formerly did not exist, that was simply a nothingness. The momentary feeling is elevated to a state that is in turn elevated to the quality of this you, this ego. And by this means, by such magical thinking, Sartre says, you create this entirely illusory construct, the ego, to fill the void, the nothingness of consciousness with an I. This is what I am, a hater of Pierre, among other things. Now, Sartre thought that most people go through life acting in bad faith and fooling themselves into believing that they are egos with these preset qualities, when actually they are just making things up. And they do this because they are afraid of their own freedom and the absurdity of their position in the world, which is, according to Sartre, the truly essential thing about them. Their essential nature is that they lack an essential nature. We are what we are not, and we are not what we are, Sartre says. Okay, in the next video, we will learn more about Sartre's being and nothingness and explore some of the things that he got really, really wrong.